alcohol, booze, drinking, heavy drinking, binge drinking. Is drinking a problem? Is it a problem for you? How do we know if drinking is a problem? For me, I waited way too long to admit that alcohol was a problem, and it did a lot of damage. So is there a way to determine if alcohol is a problem before it wrecks our life? Yes, there is. You don't have to wait for everything to fall apart before you figure out that you have a problem with alcohol. My hope in this video, by the end of this video, that you'll be able to look at the way you use alcohol and be closer to answering the question, is alcohol a problem for me? So let's just get into it. I'm Andy. This is the Church Basement. This channel is a place where I post content to help men who are struggling. One of the things that a lot of men struggle with is alcohol. Some of you are watching this video knowing that you probably have a drinking problem, but others of you, you're not really sure. First, I want to talk to the people who are leaning towards, I have a problem. And then I want to talk to the people who aren't really sure. Sometimes it's easy to spot a problem in our life because of the consequences that we experience, or maybe because other problems are popping up in life. Personally, I knew that drinking was a problem because of what it was doing to me. Physically, I didn't feel good. I felt like garbage a lot of mornings after nights of heavy drinking. Emotionally, felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I was down, I was depressed, I was anxious, I was afraid. Relationally, I wasn't the dad I wanted to be. I wasn't the husband I wanted to be. I wasn't the follower of Jesus that I wanted to be. I was lying about my habits. I was trying to cover up what I was doing, sneaking around to buy alcohol. There are clear signs that alcohol was a problem in my life, both in how I was behaving and how I was feeling. When you see these types of things pop up in our lives, it's clear something's not right. There's a problem. So if you can relate to my experiences, you might be thinking alcohol is a problem for you, and you're probably right. The good news is there's hope, you're not alone, and there's definitely a way forward. I didn't believe that for a long time, so I'm telling you that because I know when you're confronted with a problem, especially an alcohol problem, there can be a lot of shame and a lot of hopelessness. So we're going to get into how to deal with the alcohol problem in other videos. But for now, I just want you to know there's grace and there's hope. Jesus can handle your mess, and his grace is sufficient to handle your stuff. So that's the good news, no matter who's watching this video. But what if alcohol hasn't wrecked your life yet? Can it still be a problem? Can it still be a problem if we don't see all the other problems in our life? If we're not seeing the red flags and not experiencing all the negative consequences? If our life hasn't fallen apart yet, is alcohol a problem? It sure could be. We just need to spend some time doing some self-evaluation, looking for stuff that might point to something going on under the surface internally, stuff that's not as easy to recognize as the external evidence. One of the most helpful things that I was told about spotting problems or obsessions or an addiction came from my counselor. And he said once, patterns over time are a problem. The first sign that you might have a problem is actually a pattern. A pattern exists. You've probably heard people say I'm a creature of habit. I've noticed that phrase isn't used with good habits. It's used when we do things we maybe shouldn't be doing. Like, I'm a creature of habit. What'd you expect? I like the word tendencies here. We develop certain tendencies in life. Something happens, some triggering event or some feeling, and we tend to react in certain ways. If we react in a way that almost every single time that event happens or a feeling arises, there is a pattern. When I hear people share their story about addiction or recovery or whatever it is that they've struggled with, there are usually patterns that emerge from basically every single story I hear. There's a feeling, something uncomfortable, and they deal with that feeling through alcohol. There's a situation, an event, a specific condition or circumstance, and alcohol is what they turn to during that time. And you don't just have a drink, you have whatever it takes to deal with the feelings or to deal with the situation. Something or some feeling triggers you to drink. That's a pattern. Another behavior that usually follows this pattern. You drink, you maybe do something stupid, harmful, hurtful. You feel bad, so you apologize and you make a promise, I'm never going to do that again. But inevitably, some feeling or situation pops up and you still drink and you break the promise. You have a trigger pattern and you have a promise breaking pattern. Both of these are problems. For example, let's say when you get really stressed, you tend to drink, and you drink a little more than you normally do, and you end up buzzed or drunk or worse. And let's say that every time you get stressed, this is the thing you go to. This is the pattern. Stress triggers drinking. But let's also assume you don't get stressed that often, so this doesn't happen that often. So it's not that frequent. People tend to think that because something isn't frequent, it's not a problem. But according to my counselor, frequency doesn't matter as much as the pattern existing over a period of time. Meaning, if this pattern has been in your life for years, decades, it doesn't matter how frequent it is. What matters is that it's a pattern. So using that example, the fact that you almost always get drunk when stressed, that's a problem. Why? Well, partly because that's not a healthy way to deal with stress. Stress isn't always bad. It can help us grow. It can help us depend on God. But also because it's a default reaction. If stress almost always leads to drinking, there's a pattern, and patterns are problems. Odds are you will probably encounter more stress someday. And if you do, you'll turn to alcohol more and more. And someday, this could turn into a really big problem. And someday it could become much more frequent, which means it'll be a much bigger problem, which means it could affect your life in serious ways. A lot of people in recovery share a similar story. Looking back with hindsight and with wisdom, they see the problem long before it wrecked their life. They ignored it because it wasn't that frequent. It wasn't doing any damage. But then life took a turn, life got hard, and they experienced certain feelings or certain situations more often, and they got drunk more often, and then it started to do real damage. The problem is the pattern, a trigger followed by unhealthy coping. It's a dysfunctional pattern, and it's what makes it a problem. And finally, what's really deceiving about frequency is that if something happens only occasionally, that can actually convince us that our drinking is under control because it's not a problem all these other times in life. The truth is, using this example again, when you're stressed and you immediately turn to alcohol, you are not in control. You are guided by a tendency that is ingrained in you. It might seem like you're in control, but that's just because you're not being triggered. But once triggered, the truth is revealed. Something causes you to turn to alcohol to get drunk, and you have very little control in that moment over what's happening. And that is a problem. Patterns are problems. So that's the first thing to look for. Now we're going to shift and we're going to get a little deeper, and we're going to look at intentions. Why do you drink? In Alcoholics Anonymous, you'll hear people say, I don't have a drinking problem. I have a solution problem. I love that line. It gets to the core of what drives so many people and their use and abuse of alcohol. It's used as a solution to life's problems. This is the second thing we look for. Alcohol has become a solution. This is my experience, and it might be yours too. It's the reality that when life hands us certain situations or we feel certain things, we respond by turning to alcohol as a solution for what we're experiencing. Alcohol is not a solution to anything. It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve issues. It doesn't resolve conflict. It doesn't fix things. It's a mask. It's a Band-Aid. It's an escape from reality. We use alcohol and we feel great for a little bit. During that little bit, we don't have to worry about the real problems, which only makes things worse in the long run. You're numbing the pain. You're not healing. You're avoiding the issue. You're not solving it. This is a solution problem. So how do you know that you're using alcohol as a solution? Well, you have to ask questions like this. What do you feel that you don't like feeling because it's uncomfortable or painful or overwhelming? Things like anger, shame, worry, sadness, loneliness, boredom, that sort of stuff. Is there a situation or a circumstance that stresses you out and overwhelms you? Is there a relationship that is especially challenging? Someone driving you crazy? Maybe someone making you feel unloved or unwanted? Do you tend to resort to alcohol because of these feelings, because of these situations, because of these people? If so, you're using alcohol to solve the problem of feeling uncomfortable, stressed, bothered, unloved. But we're not really solving the problem. We're avoiding the problem. The reason you're feeling whatever you're feeling or experiencing whatever you're experiencing is because something's off. Something might be wrong. Something might need to be dealt with. We have to deal with it. If your solution is to drink, the issue is never resolved or explored or anything. So some examples. If you're stressed, lonely, sad, depressed, worried, and you drink to cope, the things making you stressed, lonely, sad, or depressed, they're still there. And you've just numbed yourself. And the problem is still there, waiting for you to sober up. Another thing, is there a situation or a circumstance that you find yourself in that makes you feel ashamed, where you end up turning to alcohol? Alcohol will never solve a shame problem. Shame comes from believing or perceiving that we've done something wrong. And you know what? Maybe we have done something wrong, but maybe we only believe we've done something wrong. Or, this is how shame affects us a lot, we believe we are wrong. Shame tends to attack our identity. Alcohol does nothing to solve the problems of what I believe or how I act or how I think I am. It just makes it worse. So if you find yourself, even if it's only occasionally, using alcohol as a solution to specific problems, you might have a solution problem. Okay, another thing to look for is the influence alcohol has over us and our lives. In the AA Big Book, which is like the main resource for Alcoholics Anonymous, it lays out the 12 steps. A lot of people think the first step is admitting you have a problem. That's close, but not exactly. Here's what it actually says. Step 1 says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. That's how step 1 of AA describes the alcoholic's main issue with alcohol, powerlessness. Now, powerlessness isn't exclusive to alcoholics or addicts. It's part of the human condition. We just don't have the power to do certain things. And for some people, there's a point where they are powerless over alcohol. Let's break that down because most of us, we're not going to be quick to admit that we're powerless. This idea of being powerless goes directly against the grain of a society that tells you you can do anything. It also tends to not get a lot of traction in the church, which is a bummer, and I think mostly comes from a misunderstanding of the idea of powerlessness. The reality is humans are powerless in a lot of ways. Powerlessness is about our limitations and our lack of ability to do something no matter how hard we try or how bad we want it or how much we wish we could do it. We just can't do what we wish we could or think we can. The way I like to describe it is powerlessness means that you, on your own, are unable to make something happen. Some things are impossible for humans to deal with. Some things we just can't deal with on our own, without the help of God and without the help of others. We have limits, and no matter how much willpower or effort or discipline or knowledge that we have, we just cannot deal with certain things or control certain things in our life. So my own experiences support this. Maybe yours do too. Well, guess what? Scripture supports this as well. In Romans 7, Paul describes the struggle of being a believer who still tries to do it all by themselves. Here's what he says, verse 18, "For I have a desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing. Now if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me." There's a lot going on in Romans 7. This isn't the place for a complete breakdown, but the reality is there are times, there are situations, there are circumstances, and there are moments that if we lean on our own willpower, our own effort, when we want to do what is right, when we know what is right, we still do what we don't want to do. That's powerlessness. The point is, we are all powerless to different degrees over different things. Some people become powerless over specific things. For alcoholics and addicts, they'd say they are powerless over alcohol or substances or behaviors that when you put them in the right situation, they will most definitely lose the battle to temptation if they try to tackle it alone. There's an illustration I like to use to describe powerlessness and also acceptance and surrender, which we're going to look at in other videos, because that's the answer to powerlessness. I like to imagine a car that is stuck on train tracks. So imagine you're in a car and all of a sudden it just dies. I've definitely had cars like that. And it dies right in the middle of the train tracks. Not only that, a train is heading straight towards you. This is not good. You try to get the car running again, continually turning the key. Nothing. You bang on the steering wheel with your fist. Nothing. You pump the gas. You scream. You freak out. None of that works. The car is stuck. Also, no matter what you do, you can't stop the train, right? There is no way to stop a train. Even if it's approaching slowly at like 3 miles per hour, a walking pace, it doesn't matter. It has too much mass and power and momentum. The train is coming no matter what. This illustration captures what powerlessness really is. No matter what you do, if you stay put in that car, you will get crushed. No matter how hard you try to get the car started, it doesn't matter. You can't start the car. You can't stop the train. You're powerless in this situation. Occasionally, we find ourselves stuck on the train tracks in life. Certain situations where on our own, with all our effort and might, we lack the power we need to control, to change, to fix, to avoid whatever's coming our way. The train is coming no matter what. This is powerlessness. Powerlessness is marked by our inability to accept that something is the way it is and our inability to do anything about it. In relation to the train track illustration, we tell ourselves, we got this. You know what? I can change this. I can handle this. I just need to fill in the blank. We just need to try harder, to do more, to be better, to find and learn the secret. And we'll get ourselves out of this mess. I just need to change my habits and the problem's going to be solved. We lean into self-reliance and self-sufficiency. And at the same time, we deny that any real danger is coming. This is how many people find themselves in a battle with alcohol because they don't approach or even acknowledge their powerlessness in the situation. So they end up stuck in a lifelong battle. On the outside, it might not look that bad, but internally it is. This battle is going on where you want to change, you try to change, and you try to avoid alcohol, but you can't. So how do we spot powerlessness? We ask ourselves questions like this. Do I keep telling myself over and over again that I need to change, but I can't? Do I keep trying to control drinking only to end up giving in? Do you continue to drink even though you know it's bad for you and is creating more problems? Do you find yourself turning to alcohol when you believe you shouldn't? Do you find yourself turning to alcohol when you don't necessarily want to, but you do? Do you find yourself automatically thinking about numbing out and escaping when you feel or experience fear, worry, sadness, anger, boredom, loneliness, or shame? Is there a situation or a circumstance that drives you to numb, escape, and run? Do you feel a lack of control in certain situations where alcohol is present? These are revealing questions. If you find yourself answering yes to these questions, you might have some powerlessness growing inside you regarding alcohol. Okay, back to step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, just covered that, and that our lives had become unmanageable. We admitted that our lives had become unmanageable. Unmanageability is the evidence in our lives of the powerlessness in our lives. It's not the drinking itself. It's what the drinking does to us as functioning people. It messes everything up, and life becomes harder. Is your life harder because of alcohol? I remember when I first got into recovery, I really struggled to grasp what this meant. And looking back, it's because I think at the time, I still believed deep down I could manage life. I still felt like I could control things, I could make things work, and I could keep everything functioning, right? I was in so much denial. The stress and the anxiety and the shame and the pressure you feel from trying to continually manage life while also sabotaging yourself through continued alcohol use is crazy. So what does unmanageability look like in our life? I would say in general, in my own words, it's trying to hold on to this life you wish you had or you once had while you see it slowly diminishing or getting harder or harder to maintain. Your finances take a hit. Your health takes a hit. Your mental and emotional well-being, it's diminishing. Your relationships are being neglected. You're not practicing or thinking about your faith. Drinking takes priority over your goals, over your day-to-day activities, your values, and your commitments. You break promises that you've made to others. You break promises that you've made to yourself. You experience the consequences in real ways. You feel like garbage. You feel distant from others. You feel the shame and the guilt. You're behind on life. You forget things. Your quality of work goes down. You skip things you care about. All these are signs of a life that is getting harder and unmanageable. And typically, what we do is double down on trying to fix all this stuff without addressing the root cause, alcohol. This is unmanageability. If you see signs of unmanageability, it definitely means alcohol has become a solution to your problems and you are powerless over it. That solution that you are depending on to help you, it's failing you. Now, realizing all this stuff can be a bit overwhelming and depressing. I get it. So I want to acknowledge that none of this is easy. Life is hard, and alcohol makes it harder, which means dealing with alcohol, though hard on its own, will make your life better in the long run. You are not alone. You are not hopeless. You're not helpless, and there is a way forward. Patterns can be broken, and problems can be dealt with. Powerlessness doesn't mean hopeless. It doesn't mean helpless. You can change your life, and it can get more manageable. And it all starts with surrender and acceptance, which we're going to look at in another video. But just to recap, this is what you need to be looking for in your life if you're trying to figure out, is alcohol a problem? Do you turn to alcohol as a solution to other problems? Do you see a pattern in your life over and over and over again of going to alcohol in specific situations or circumstances? Do you see powerlessness growing inside you, where alcohol is something you go to even when you know you shouldn't, even if you don't want to, but it just has become something you're leaning on and you don't know why? Do you see the evidence of unmanageability in your life? The evidence in your life that things are not the way they used to be. Life is harder. You don't feel the way you used to feel. Things are being impacted by your actions and your habits related to alcohol. If you find this stuff in your life, you're not alone. You're not the worst, and there is a way forward. God's grace can handle all this stuff. I've seen it firsthand, and I've experienced it firsthand. And there is a way forward, but it's not going to be through willpower. It's not going to be through discipline. It's going to be by turning to God's grace, receiving help from Him, and turning to other people for help as well. We're going to get into that in future videos, so go check those out. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you could, share it. I believe there's a lot of people out there who need to hear this stuff, and if you share it, that would help them hear it. I'm Andy. This is The Church Basement. Again, thanks for watching.